Hello, welcome back. So we're going to create a GUI with the JavaFX API, and we're going to do it from Java code. One of the neat things about FX, one of the cool things about FX is that different people will be using it, and you might be learning FX from a different direction if you are a designer, a UI designer. So we're going to assume here that you are a Java programmer, and the GUI can be created completely in Java code. And that's probably not the way that it will mostly be done, but we can do it in Java code and we can understand it as programmers, and then we can kind of understand how the designer might create a user interface, and the tools that they would use are different from Java code. So they would be creating an interface in a different environment called Scene Builder and generating an XML-like representation of the user interface, and this is called FXML. This is a similar way to how Microsoft has done this with XAML, and they separate the responsibilities of the user interface design from the coding of the application, and that allows the different people who specialize in different skills to participate in the project without each other. If the user interface designer should not need the programmer for every change they make in the user interface. So user interface, user experience, I have IX there, I meant user experience, UX, graphical user interface. These are all the same thing depending on which direction you're coming from. So we're going to start writing code, and just before we do, we're going to talk about these four terms. So the stage is the main application area. It might be the full screen, it might be a window with a border around it. That would be most typical in a desktop application. The scene is the layout on the stage, and then the pane is the way that you divide up the scene so that things get laid out in a nice way. And the nodes are the widgets that you put on the pane. So the buttons and the text boxes and the drop downs and the labels and all of those things are nodes. They exist in panes, and panes exist in a scene, and the scene exists on the stage. So the stage and the scene, taking this allegory from the theater, it works kind of, but not very far. You don't get very far with that, but the stage and setting the scene on the stage, that's kind of a nice way of thinking about it. We need a better way of representing the graphical user interface, and we're going to call that a scene graph. So when you look at something that's a fairly complicated layout of nodes in panes and so on, we're going to have a way of representing that as a graph, so it's easy for you to see where each of the components exists in relationship to the other components. Okay, let's go back to the Eclipse and look at some code. Okay, so here we are in Eclipse, the Luna version, and we have installed the Eclipse FX plugin. Now when we say new project, we have the JavaFX option here, and we can make a JavaFX project. And this is kind of the hello world of JavaFX, and they give us a main class and some code in here. And this should run the way it is, and it shows you a window with nothing in it, but you get this for free. And this is kind of a nice way of starting a project eventually, but it's even more complicated than I want our very first one to be. So I'm going to throw this stuff away. And we will start again just from the start method. So you know that all Java applications have a main method entry point that takes an array of strings, And we override the start method from the application class. This is the application class from the JavaFX package. And we override the start method, and they give us this. They pass in the primary stage. So we don't have to make our own stage, that's made for us. And then we work with the stage to create the user interface. If you run your programs from the command line, then you're going to need the start method. Sorry, you're going to need the main method. If you don't run from the command line, if you run from Eclipse, for example, you don't even need this. You don't need to call the launch. But we'll leave it there just for fun. Maybe take it out later to show that it's not needed there. So we'll start getting used to these classes. Let's take the primary stage and let's put a title on this just so that we can start playing with these. Set title, and let's say all the world's a stage. Allow Eclipse to let you get comfortable with these things, the methods that are in there. What can you do with a stage? Wow, look at all these things you can do with the stage. There's a lot, and you won't learn everything that there is to learn about each one. Just start playing with them. Okay, next let's make a scene. Make a scene. I've done that before. And we're going to say that this scene is going to refer to the pane. Now, we don't have the pane yet, but we're going to make it 400 by 400 pixels. So that's going to be our scene. And this will feel a little bit backwards to you. So we need a pane. We're going to put at least one pane in the scene, and let's make a pane. There are different kinds of panes that we can make, and one of the easy ones is to make a stack pane. A stack pane. It implies that there's a stack of them, one over top of the other. And we're not going to do that yet. We're just going to have one stack pane, a one stack pane. And when these don't compile, you're going to have to import them. So hover over them and find the import statement that's appropriate. Be careful that you don't get the wrong one, because some of these names are reused from other packages, especially the swing classes. But we're going to import the ones from the JavaFX package, of course. So now we have a pane and we have a scene. Those are kind of created in a backwards way. Now let's make a widget to put on our scene. Let's make a button. Okay, a button that has click me on it. We're going to have to import the button. Now be careful with this one. There's a button in AWT. We don't want that one. We want the button in JavaFX. Now we have to somehow place this button into the scene. And this will feel a little bit uncomfortable for you at the beginning, but you'll get used to it. So let's take the stack pane and get its children. Get children. And look at the data type. Children is an observable list. And so what we have, this expression evaluates to an observable list that doesn't have anything in it yet, because we haven't yet added anything to it. So we get this list, and then we're going to add the button that we created. Now let's call the show method to tell FX that we want you to package all this stuff up and display it onto the screen. Okay, make sure that we don't have any mistakes here. Maybe we do, I don't know. We've left out one step, sorry. We have, this should have been a clue here. We have the stage, and then we make a pane, and we make a scene that's associated with the pane. We haven't associated the scene with the stage. Okay, let's do that. So we're going to say primary stage, and we're going to set the scene, and we'll put the scene on the stage. Okay. Some of this feels very unnatural, especially compared to how we did things in Swing, but we will get used to it. I'm assured that we will get used to it. So let's run this and see if we have an application with a button on it. And we do. So we have the stage, the scene, the pane, and the nodes. And we only have one of each this time. One stage, one scene, one pane, and one node. But that's the order of things that we're going to get comfortable with at some point. Well, I'm afraid that that might have been a little bit complicated. So I've rearranged this code to work from the bottom to the top. So the nodes, the things that we're going to have the user click on and interact with, the smallest components in this organization, let's make that first. And then go up one level and let's make the pane. This is something that used to be called a panel, and in other GUI builders it's a panel. It's the place where your nodes get arranged. So we're going to make a panel, in this case a stack panel, sorry, it's a stack pane, and then we will add our button to that pane. So we're working up. Now we're going to make the scene, and we're going to put the pane onto the scene. And then lastly, we're going to take the stage and put the scene on the stage. And then, so I did everything with the stage down here, and the very last thing that you do is to show the stage. So this might make a little bit more sense for you. It's before it gets too complicated, I want us to kind of get a handle on how all of these things are going to work. Okay, so next what I want us to do is to start looking at the widgets, the nodes that we might put on our interface. And an easy way of doing that, instead of using a stack pane, I want to use something called a flow pane. A flow pane. It's not really very useful. It's so simple, it's something that we can use for demonstration here, just for the purpose of, let's import that one, just for the purpose of getting something interesting. So last time we made a button. Let's make another button and make them a little bit different somehow. Say hey on that one, hey click me. And now when we add things to the pane, we can add more than one at a time if we call the add all method. So let's add all. Let's add the button and the button 2. And let's run that. So my purpose for doing this was to show you what happens with a flow pane. So we added things one after another. This is the stupidest possible layout. Let's just add things into the panel one after the other, and if we run out of room, let's go to the next line. So it's the pane, or the pane that decides where the component goes. And the different kinds of panes that we have decide how the components get arranged in that pane. So a flow pane, the simplest possible one, we'll use that to play with some more of the nodes, some more widgets, and just add them to that flow pane just for the purpose of seeing them and seeing what's available to us as we build these GUIs in FX. Okay, so one of the things we can do is make a label. Labels are text that appears on your user interface and they don't do anything. Be careful with getting the right label. And now we have a label that belongs to the FX, and we could add that node in here too. So a piece of text on your user interface that doesn't do anything, it might be a prompt for something. Maybe we could put something there like, enter your name. Okay, so far so good. I call these busy boxes when you are just experimenting with the UI controls and you want to just throw stuff up there to see how it would look. Busy boxes. Let's make a radio button. Instead of doing this where you import them, you could do a Control-Shift-O. That makes me really nervous, because Control-Shift-O will import the most likely one, and you might not get the right one. So radio button, let's keep using the hover over and go and get the import statements. If you get something that really is acting strange, go up here and open your import statements and make sure that you haven't imported something from the AWT or the swing package that has the same name. That's going to be someplace to trip that will be really confusing, because the code will look exactly the same as mine, but it's the import statement that has the chance of being where you've made a mistake. I wonder if you can put the text for the radio button right in here. How would we find that out? Let's do a Shift F2 and read the document for the radio button constructor. We can see that it's a node, is a node. A radio button is all of these things. It is a control, it is a node, and you can add nodes to your panels. Oh, a toggle group, a radio button. Yes, we can put the text right for that radio button right in here. Well, this is a good example. This is a good example. Let's steal it. We're going to have to import the toggle group. We've already used button 2 for something else. Yeah, button 2 was not too interesting. We can throw that one away. Now what will we add to our pane? I would think that we would add the group. And some of this I'm going to add. Oh, no, we can't add the group. Let's go back and find out how we add it to a pane. Well, it looks like we add the buttons themselves, the radio buttons, to the pane. I keep wanting to say panel because in Swing it's a panel, but we'll try and call it panes. And the radio button group, the the toggle group affects the behavior of the buttons, and the layout is done with the buttons themselves. So let's just run that and see what it looks like. Okay, so we've got here the 2 radio buttons. One of them is selected, and Because these two separate radio button objects are in a group, you can only pick one of them at a time. So it's the behavior of the buttons that the group is in charge of, but the layout is still in charge of, the layout is still done by the pane. Okay, let's make a place for the user to enter some text, and this one we're going to call text field. I'm going to call it name field. And let's import the right one, not the AWT one, the JavaFX one. And I wonder if we just add that without passing any parameter to the constructor, what it would look like in our flow pane. Okay, so then we've got a button, we've got a label, now we've got a text field where the user can enter something. This must be a default size for a text field, and we've got radio buttons, and those are all in a flow pane. And the layout is really horrible. We aren't doing that part yet. Just letting those components, those nodes flow there. And I would like you to go ahead and add a whole bunch more nodes to this flow pane just for the purpose of seeing them. And how are you going to know what the possible controls are? So open a browser window and do a search for JavaFX UI controls and start looking through the things that are available for you and just playing with them. I don't need to read all of this for you. Let's just, well, we made labels, buttons, radio buttons. There's checkboxes, choice boxes. We made a text field. Tree views are interesting. But on each of these, you will get a little code sample of how to add those to your pane. And they might be using stack panes in their examples, but you can add them to your flow panes if you want to, so that you can see all the other ones. Just keep playing with them. Add as many of them as you can and go through this understanding all of the UI controls. That's where I would like us to go next. So I think we're getting the idea of putting buttons and widgets of all kinds onto the pane. Now I want us to look at some of the panes. The stack pane, which wasn't too interesting because it just put one thing on top of another. The flow pane is also really not too interesting because it doesn't really do very much layout at all. It just puts things onto the pane one after another, and when it runs out of room it goes to the next row. So some of them are very interesting, and it starts to get much more fun when you look at the getting stuff onto the user interface in the place where you want it. And that's where we're going to go next.